hello, and welcome to episode number 279 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carl Stebbings, and joining me in a mildly warm PTUK studio this week is my co-host, sweltering Matt Smith.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Sweltering.
I know he's so hot, bless him.
It is quite... Thanks for that. Yeah, it is quite warm, isn't it, at the moment? Thankfully, it is not as warm as it was yesterday.
No,
that is our only saving grace.
No, we can confirm. We did hit here in East Anglia 37 degrees Celsius.
37, I know. And in fact, in Cambridge is where we actually broke the highest ever temperature in the UK, wasn't it? At 37.8 degrees. 37.
It was definitely a warm one, and today has been much the same. But last night, I will say, I don't know if anyone was flying in a commercial airline across the East Anglia last night, but we did have one of the best electrical storms that I think I've seen in a very long time. It lasted for a long while.
A couple of interesting things, actually. As many of you know, one of my friends is actually a meteorologist, and he's obsessed and goes to the States quite often storm chasing, and loves all his hurricanes and stuff like that. He was actually saying that the storm that we had last night was probably one of the best that he's ever seen. Because in the UK we don't get like the rolling thunder and lightning around us. Do you know what I mean? Usually you just have a couple of claps and then it goes away. And that.
I tell you, it got to the stage last night where I literally thought I might as well turn all the lights off in the house because the lightning was just constantly constant lightning.
Yeah,
but that was good.
Yeah, actually, before we talk to Armando, I want to mention a program that started on BBC 4 very recently. Have you watched it?
I've got it on my box to watch at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you'll enjoy it, but not perhaps for the correct reasons.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
I think that's the best way.
Is Carol Vorderman on there?
No, sadly not.
Okay.
Andy Peters, who is a national treasure as far as broadcasting is concerned. I mean, you and I remember him from the broom cupboard. He invented T4, blah blah blah. But yes, Chris Griggs, I think, has mentioned it perfectly in the chat room there, saying anyone else enduring plane spotting live on BBC 4.
Oh, dear.
I mean, there was a big revelation, I think, was it last night or the night before, where they discovered Flight Radar 24.
Wow.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Which, let's be honest, we've all been using for years, you know. So,
and on that bombshell.
Yes, absolutely.
Nev can't be with us this week. He is working very hard on another project at the moment. So apologies from Nev, but he sends everyone his fondest regards. So we hope you're having fun, Nev, whatever you're doing with that paperwork type stuff.
I hate paperwork.
We have got someone joining us. Actually, two people joining us from across the pond at a very special event air show over at Oshkosh. Joining us this week, it's Armando and his gorgeous wife, Meg.
Hey, everybody. This is Armando and Megan Carrion reporting live, actually, from EAA AirVenture. Oh, my gosh.
And I'm ripping out the cord from his ears.
Oh, no.
We're such a well-oiled machine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Move along. Nothing to say.
So we are here at Oshkosh AirVenture, and it's been, to steal a term from the guys over at Opposing Bases, it is podcast cross-pollination, because in the last 3 days we've met up with APG, Opposing Bases, Airplane Geeks, Flying Down Under, Flying in Life, basically every aviation podcast out there. We all met up at the APG RV and just hung out and had some beverages in the sweltering Wisconsin heat. And it's just been a great time.
Unfortunately, of course, you are there flying the flag for PTUK, I'm pleased to say.
That's correct. Pip, Al, and I had to fight for it, but we did get the media credentials, and my lovely bride did get some media credentials.
Yay.
She's actually been doing all the camera work.
Very good, very good. This is what we like to hear. Now, we've got a couple of special videos that we're going to play later on in the show, because we're going to let you get on with your time there. How much longer is left? So it finishes tomorrow, is it?
Yeah, so we've got Friday and Saturday left. We arrived on Sunday afternoon, and our first day was on Monday, and it is a lot of walking. This is our first Oshkosh, and it's just amazing. Every day we felt like we covered maybe a tenth of the show, and they're just beautiful airplanes to look at. But more importantly, it's meeting up with people and getting a chance to talk to all of these people involved in aviation and some really, really interesting aircraft and innovators. Last night we were at the Lancer dinner where somebody's pushing a home-built aircraft over the 400-mile-per-hour mark. It's just what an amazing place to see aviation and the roots of aviation with some people that are really coming up with some creative things.
Yeah.
And I might add, because I'm kind of an aside in the aviation
you're sort of
community.
you're there under duress, let's be honest. Yeah.
Well, so I've had my eyes open, and I think a lot of this has been really inspiring for me as a woman. There's been a lot of women in aviation talks. There's been we've done interviews with women in aviation, and they're just super inspiring. So I am walking away with a lot of new understanding about aviation and airplanes, and it's been really great.
Yeah, and
well done.
and that point, right? That you can take somebody that's new to aviation and they walk away from AirVenture with a new interest and a new love for aviation. So
fantastic.
That being said, we got some great interviews coming up with Miss Amanda Simpson from Airbus, a vice president of Airbus Americas. We've got a lovely couple from New Zealand that is flying across the world in a Comanche. That's a lot of water for a Comanche, but they're doing it. And then in the next few weeks, we'll have Captain Tammy Jo Schultz from Southwest Airlines 1380. We had a great short but really good interview with her. Also just an inspiring story. What I really loved about it, we'll talk about it more, but she right off the bat included her first officer. She said, Darren and I handled that, and as soon as the emergency popped up. So I love it when captains that are thrust into the limelight like that for whatever reason immediately recognize that it's not about them, it's about an entire crew handling an adverse situation. So we had a really, really good time. Just wonderful person, really approachable. So good interviews, great people here at Oshkosh.
Good food, cheese curds everywhere.
And ice cream.
Yeah, we've done really well. We've got like 10 minutes in without mentioning food. I think that's a real result. I mean, obviously, everybody's desperate to know how long was it before Captain Al had his first ice cream. How long was it?
I don't know.
Probably getting off the airplane, I imagine.
Well, yeah, there is that. Yes, that is true. All right, look, guys, we're going to let you get back to your Oshkoshing. Thank you so much for joining us at the start of the show there. And anything in particular you're hoping to go and see today?
I think we're going to try to hit the museum. We've been walking the grounds, and we haven't seen the EAA museum, which is a great indoor activity. But I think that's pretty much the plan today. And then this evening, we're going to see some of the STOL demos, the short takeoff and landing demos.
Fantastic.
Well, maybe more fireworks. There has been a couple of, there's been one really enormous fireworks show. They do a night air show where the airplanes have, I guess, LED lights all over the outside of, I don't know, some lighting on the outside of them. And then they have fire, I don't know the technical terms, fire shooting out the back of the airplanes, and they have fireworks coming out of the airplanes in the sky. And then on top of that all, there's fireworks and these big explosions on the ground. It's pretty insane. They're doing that again, I think, tonight or tomorrow night. So we'll probably catch that again.
Fantastic. Well, look, enjoy the rest of your time there, guys, and we can't wait to hear all about it next week.
Make sure you're back next week.
It looks a lot like your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Although, actually, the picture on our background, I should just say, is actually from Riyadh. Believe it or not. So obviously last weekend was the Riyadh air show, and that was taken by what are you doing, Carlos?
what is that?
So I think
and I've got a suggestion for them.
Oh, go on then.
If you're looking for a cooler place at Oshkosh, head on down to the seaplane base. That's a really fun area, very pastoral, not crowded. It's really enjoyable. I think you'll find that's a special little hidden treasure at Oshkosh.
Hey, Matt, now that the cat's out of the bag and we've heard the voice, I just want to say, Max, first of all, thanks for having me over at the Airplane Geeks a couple months ago.
Of course.
It was great to be on that. But I am a personal fan of Max Trescott. I've had your training materials for over a decade, really, when we transitioned to the Garmin products and the airplanes that I fly. And you're one of those podcasts that I do manage to keep up on. So early plug for Aviation News Talk. I'm a huge fan, Max, and I'm sorry I'm not able to stay for the rest of the show.
Great to talk to you.
There we go. All right then, Armando.
Thanks, Armando.
And Megan,
Take care, Meg.
We'll let you get away, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Take care, Meg. Bye. Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye.
So you heard then we have got a very special co-host joining us on the show this week, or guest co-host on the show this week. So joining us then this week, as those of you who follow us on Facebook will know, we have got Max Trescott, who is the 2008 National CFR of the Year, selected to represent all 96,000 flight instructors in the US. He's written 2 books, including Max Trescott's G1000 and Perspective Glass Cockpit Handbook. He lives in the San Francisco Bay Area and is a Cirrus Platinum CSIP instructor. He teaches full-time in Cirrus aircraft, and he recently finished his type rating in the Cirrus SF-50 Vision Jet. Don't forget you can hear him talking about general aviation and Cirrus aircraft every week on his Aviation News Talk podcast. And also, not forgetting the Airplane Geeks podcast. So welcome onto the show, Max Trescott.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here. Got to tell you, it's been a typical California morning for me already here. I mean, I went surfing and then went to my Pilates class, and this afternoon I'm having my plastic surgery. So, it's just a normal California day here.
Nothing to see here. Perfectly normal day. Yes,
and is it a case of halfway through the day, Max, you're going to go up in the Cirrus and just pull that little red handle?
And people ask me if I have pulled the handle, and the answer is yes, I have, in the simulator.
I see what you did there. Brilliant. Yeah.
No, it's very costly when you pull that red handle, Matt.
Why? What does it do?
It releases a parachute.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The whole airplane parachute. Yep. Comes on down.
It's one of the neat features of the Cirrus.
Well, I mean, it sounds very practical.
It's very good. It saved many lives as well.
As a nervous flyer, I find that very comforting.
I know.
Yeah, and that's where I'll be headed this afternoon. In fact, I've swapped my day around here. Originally, I had a flight scheduled this time, so switched that to the afternoon.
Wow.
And I have been planning to be at AirVenture. I've been there about a dozen times, but just had some projects I need to catch up on this week, so I decided to stay home this time.
Fantastic.
So we're going to welcome on to the show all the chat room viewers this week as well who are watching the show live. We've got Myla joining us, Auntie Liz, Masha's here, Chris Griggs, Neil Lamworn, hello to you, Neil. We've got Evan Shue, hello to you, Evan, Tony S. I'm scrolling down the list, Lane Street. Okay, so I've missed anyone. Have I missed anyone? I always miss someone.
Yeah.
So for everyone who's joined us...
It's a very dangerous game to do that.
It's a very dangerous game, I know.
I'd be inclined to
I try and name check everyone. So it is the 26th of July, and it's just coming up to 20 past 7 here in the UK. So on a very warm evening. It's
it's warm, I'll give you that.
It's safe to say we do have the fan on full blast behind us, so if you can hear the fan running...
It's because we're not used to it, are we? I mean, it's, here in the UK, like sort of 15, 16 degrees is a bit tropical for us.
I bet Max has got AC in his room.
For many years, the houses in my neighborhood had no air conditioning, and all of us started adding it in the last few years. So, we have air conditioning in the house now. Used to be, you really didn't need it except a couple days a year, and now we need it a little more often.
Yeah, we have a similar problem here, I think.
So, coming up in tonight's show, obviously we've got loads of news and stuff to get through at the top of the show. And then later on the show, as Armando said a moment ago, we've got his first interview from Oshkosh, which is with Amanda Simpson, who is the Vice President for Research and Technology at Airbus Americas. And she was also formerly former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for Operational Energy. So that's coming up later. And we've also got another short little interview that Armando done as well with a Canadian couple, I think, isn't that, who are Oshkosh as well, who are doing some sort of cross-country flight.
So as I say, very Oshkosh heavy tonight. Yes. I'm delighted to say that our man in the field has been working well, bless him. So looking forward to playing those out shortly. But we probably ought to do some aviation news.
Yes, let's go. So we're going to start the show then, as we do each week, with our rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if you are ready, Matt.
Born ready.
And if you're ready, Max.
We're ready from the west.
Let's go. So, kicking off this week's first news story on the simpleflying.com website, this one, and the headline, and I remember reading about this a few years back. This is how Delta employees brought the airline a Boeing 767. That's nice of them, isn't it? So the first Boeing 767 for Delta was a special aircraft for the airline. In fact, Delta's employees brought the aircraft for Delta as a gesture of appreciation. When the first Boeing 767 was delivered in 1982, Delta faced some tough times. However, their employees bound together and sought to keep Delta flying for years to come. The Delta Flight Museum website has a page dedicated to the 767. The original effort involved much tenacity and ambition from 3 Delta flight attendants. At the end of their fundraising drive, Delta's employees raised $30 million to finance the new aircraft. Finally, on the 15th of December 1982, 7,000 employees gathered at the celebration to christen Ship 102. The Boeing 767-200 was named the Spirit of Delta and came at a time of financial headwinds for the carrier. For the first time in 35 years, Delta has posted a net loss. At the time, the airline industry was struggling due to a weak economy and fuel prices. Beyond that, the airline deregulation created a competitive market, and Delta's employees, however, were willing to let the airline fail. So after its ceremony, the 767 flew their inaugural service, or the aircraft itself, from Delta's main hub in Atlanta to Tampa, Florida. The leisure route was a huge market for Delta and still is to this day. Currently, Delta flies a Boeing 767-300ER from Tampa on transatlantic flights to KLM's hub in Amsterdam. So at the end of Ship 102's life, the aircraft had seen many phases of Delta. The aircraft was painted in special liveries that included the celebration of the 1996 Olympics held in Atlanta. And in addition, 2004, the Spirit of Delta flew in the 75th anniversary livery. This aircraft was a natural choice to receive the special livery. And at the end of its service life, the time came for retirement. In February 2006, the Spirit of Delta left service after 70,697 hours in the air. This comprised of 34,389 trip cycles.
Wow.
And after the farewell tour, the Spirit of Delta was ready to receive a new life as a showpiece at Delta's museum.
Wow.
Isn't that a nice story?
Yeah.
I think it's quite good though. The employees actually brought, chipped together and brought. I mean, imagine if your employees or where you work chipped together and brought you a coach.
Well, I mean,
nice.
Yeah. I mean, there are only 2 of us who are full-time drivers. I mean, with the amount of people they employ, then £1 doesn't seem so bad, does it? But if you got to chip in, £125,000 each.
Have you seen this aircraft up close, Max?
No, I hadn't, but I was just kind of wondering, how do we square this with what happened after 9/11, where most of the airlines, all the salaries were cut and people were laid off. It's like a nice thank you for buying us an airplane.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah, it's a nice gesture, I suppose. That's the what to.
Sure.
I guess they're just desperate for their airline to continue to succeed. I suppose because it's nothing worse than being out of work. We all know that.
And the best thing is as well. Obviously, this aircraft is still in one piece at a museum, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on to the next story, and Matt, as always for you, it's a bit of a worrying Ryanair story, especially in our current weather.
Well, let's. I'm always a bit sceptical with some of these stories, so let's work our way through the details, shall we? It's on the metro.co.uk, which is the free newspaper that they give away on the Underground in London, and the headline is Ryanair passengers anger at having to pay for water on a delayed flight. So Ryanair passengers have been left raging after having to pay for water while being stuck on a delayed plane amid scorching temperatures. Stephen Ramsey was one of many who claimed he waited on the runway for an hour and a half while temperatures soared to a whopping 30 degrees. The passenger posted a photo on Facebook and was outraged at having to pay €3 or £2.67. Although actually I'm going to query that, because if it's €3, if you're buying it on the plane in sterling, it is also £3, isn't it? Because that's what they normally do. For 500ml bottles of water on the flight on the 13th of July. Stephen said that he thought it was wrong that a fundamental need such as water was being monetised on the flight leaving Marseille for Manchester. Although the flyer said staff were very professional and sympathetic, he said that he was told it wasn't the company's policy to hand out free water, even in hot conditions. Stephen wrote on Facebook, "My flight has been sat on the tarmac for in plus 30 degree heat for almost 2 hours. It's incredibly hot and wits are fraying. 90 minutes since we were due to depart, and we were told we can purchase 500ml bottles of water for €3. I have pointed out to staff that water should be offered, not purchased, and was told that it was not Ryanair's policy to offer free water under these circumstances. The staff have been very professional and sympathetic, but their hands are tied. They too must purchase extra water. Water is a fundamental human need and not something that ought to be monetised. I am pretty raging, as are my fellow passengers." Now, I suppose
if you're delayed, surely in a situation like this, the aircraft was delayed, so surely it should be the airline's nice thing to give passengers free water.
You are, but this is Ryanair, all right? I mean, that's not something that they're
bottled water, for God's sake.
No, I know, but I mean, the thing is there a reason why, given the temperature, that they weren't plugged into a ground power unit?
Yeah, it does seem funny they didn't have the AC running.
Yeah,
Max, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I think the O'Leary family has been, causing news stories for a long, long time. I want to bring this one up you're probably not aware of. The Great Chicago Fire in 1871 was caused by Mrs. O'Leary's cow, who kicked over a lantern.
Wow, okay.
100,000 people were homeless. So I just want to tell you, there's an O'Leary legacy.
Fair enough. Yeah, used to causing havoc, I think. But
all the times I've read stories like this, where you've had airlines that have been delayed, taken off, they've always given the passengers free drink, not Ryanair, but other airlines.
On the plane rather than in the because I mean, I've had it happen in the terminal where I've been offered sort of free food and drink, but I must admit I've never been offered it on a plane.
I mean, I suppose most US airlines, Max, you get the sort of drink complimentary anyway, even in economy.
Yes, I think most of the time the drinks are free. By the way, I was not kidding about the Chicago Fire. That was not made up. That really did happen, and that really was the source.
You heard it here
first. Yeah. No, this is, I don't know. It is a lot of this, I do worry that a lot of this is just literally stories that they almost release for free publicity, because, I mean, O'Leary will be the first to admit that, any publicity is good publicity as far as he's concerned.
Can I say the water's not chilled either? Look,
right?
I wouldn't be paying for that water. No, they've got it. Just saying.
Okay.
So moving on to the next story, Max. This one is on the BBC News website.
Well, and I'm just thinking there's a coincidence here that says Boeing warns it may stop 737 MAX production.
Oh.
I mean.
The pun.
Is that why I'm reading? Is that why I'm reading this story?
All right, you've got me.
Yeah. The pun game is strong with this one. They warn you in advance.
All right, good. Well, the story says Boeing is warning that it might have to halt production of the beloved 737 MAX if grounding continues much longer. They reported their largest ever quarterly loss of $3.4 billion on Wednesday for the quarter due to the troubled plane. And I will add parenthetically, I suspect there are going to be more losses in subsequent quarters as well. If hurdles with regulators worldwide continue, Boeing said it would consider reducing or shutting down production of the 737 MAX entirely. Our Boeing boss, Dennis Muhlenberg, is confident the plane will be back in the air by October. He said, as our efforts to support the 737 MAX's safe return to service continue, we will continue to assess our production plans. Should our estimate of the anticipated return to service change, we might need to consider possible further rate reductions or other options, including a temporary shutdown of MAX production. Boeing's entire fleet of the 737 MAX was grounded in March. Of course, we're familiar with the airline crashes that occurred, the Ethiopian Airlines flight and the Lion Air crash, which collectively killed over 300 people. As investigations continue, Boeing has been working on fixes for the MCAS anti-stall flight control software and other issues identified. Mr. Muhlenberg said the plane maker has been holding weekly technical calls with operators of the 73 MAX, while the modified software had so far been tested in 225 simulator sessions. Well, so the costs continue to spiral. They reduced production from 52 aircraft to 42 aircraft per month. And there's an amazing picture here in this article that shows, I'm guessing, 50 airliners all stored at Boeing Field. So you can imagine that since they're not able to ship any, they're kind of stacking up in the parking lot.
Am I right in thinking, Max, that if they do shut the production line right down, it would be not very good for Boeing?
No, I think that's going to be tough in a lot of different ways, because it always takes time to restart a production line. They'll probably have to lay off workers. They probably won't get all of those workers back by the time they restart. So, yeah, it's a bad deal for everyone. And I'll just add that I will be adding my lawsuits shortly as well. I really hate the way they've been ruining my brand name. So,
yeah. Dragging you through the mud unnecessarily, aren't they?
Exactly.
So it must be tough on the Geek Show. You've got two Maxes there.
Well, that's true.
On one show.
They're both raging at
raging.
the way that this has been done.
Exactly. But I must say I never get confused as to which Max is which, but the other people do.
Yeah, that is true.
So the next story is one that normally would be going to Nev, but I'll have that one this week. So
yes,
the new website, this one, thepointsguy.co.uk. Never heard of that one. So it's good news for BA, and it's also good news for me and Nev, who, fingers crossed, hopefully, touch wood, scratch my head, will be flying on this aircraft in November. So the day has finally come for BA to take delivery of their first A350. So the aircraft was delivered today, the 26th of July, and it received its first A350-1000 from Toulouse. Registered as Golf X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Alpha, the A350 making its way to London Heathrow on Friday. Today is the first of 18 of the aircraft on order. On Thursday, BA's PR team released a teaser video of the aircraft leaving the hangar. The aircraft is expected to land Heathrow. It landed at Heathrow around 2 p.m. today, and people who were following this on Flight Radar 24 probably posted many pictures on social media, I expect. So the A350 represents a brand new era for BA. Inside, passengers can expect the biggest update of the carrier's Club World Class business class product in decades. The carrier's new Club Suite product will be configured in a 1-2-1 setup, with the highlight of the suite being a door. So the A350 will feature 56 seats in Club Suite, 56 seats in World Traveller Plus, which is where me and Nev will be sitting, and 219 seats in Economy. Notably missing on the A350s is BA's first cabin. Initially, the 350s will fly short haul between London and Madrid for crew to familiarise themselves with the new aircraft and new products. And then, as of the 2nd of September, the aircraft will fly to Dubai. Yay! By the end of the year, BA will have 4 A350s in their fleet. The introduction of the A350 into service means that the end of the road is near for the Queen of the Skies, the BA's 747s, which they're expecting to be fully retired from the fleet by 2022. And, well, it is going to be sad when they get rid of the 74s, but it's great to see that BA have got the 350-1000, and I must say that there was a picture there, which it looks quite nice, I will say. And, yeah, looking forward to sampling the 350 later on this year. I'm sure me and Nev will provide a suitable passenger experience.
Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Have you sampled the 350 yet, Max?
No, afraid not.
Oh, damn! None of the airlines over in the US brought these yet. Do you know?
The last cool thing I flew was when I went to Australia last year, and that was one of their 747s, and that was just so much fun.
A BA 747.
No, that was Qantas.
Oh, Qantas one. Okay.
Yep, they had a few of them still in service. I think they're just about gone now.
Oh, such a shame. But yes, hopefully, fingers crossed. As long as me and Nev are literally watching the actual flight thing online to make sure that they don't change this, because they can swap and change these aircraft. BA.
Oh, well, and of course not the legacy flights, was it? The special flights that they were talking about.
Oh yeah,
where was it the 747s that were flying into Edinburgh and things like that, and they cancelled them at the drop of a hat, having sold all the tickets and all that kind of thing, which, as you can imagine, went down like.
Well, they could change this to a 777, which is fine. I won't be upset, but I am hopefully looking forward to flying on the 350.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll have that in writing.
I know.
We? Yeah, absolutely.
So, moving on to the next story, Matt, and a bit of a software kind of a techie type story for you on the register.
Yes, indeed. So this is to do with the A350, isn't it? Yeah, indeed. So this is on the A register. Now, again, another random site I don't think I've seen before. A software issue, as Carlos says. Airbus A350 software bug forces airlines to turn planes off and on every 149 hours. This is really comforting stuff, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Patch your darn metal bird, size EU Aviation Agency. So some models of the Airbus A350 airliners still need to be hard rebooted after exactly 149 hours, despite warnings from the EU Aviation Safety Agency, the EASA, first issued back 2 years ago. They first issued this particular warning in a mandatory airworthiness directive, AD, reissued earlier this week. EASA urged operators to turn their A350s off and on again to prevent partial or total loss of some avionics systems or functions. The revised AD, effective from tomorrow, that was the 26th of July, which is today, exempts only those new A350-941s which have had modified software preloaded on the production line. For all other A350-941s, operators need to completely power the airliner down before it reaches 149 hours of continuous power on time. Concerningly, the original 2017 AD was brought about by in-service events where a loss of communication occurred between some avionics systems and avionics networks. The impact of the failures ranged from redundancy loss to complete loss of specific function hosted on common remote data concentrator and core processing input-output modules. In layman's English, this means that prior to 2017, at least some A350s flying passengers were suffering unexplained failures of potential flight-critical digital systems. Airbus rival Boeing very publicly suffered from a similar time-related problem with its 787 Dreamliner back in 2015. A memory overflow bug was discovered that caused the 787 generators to shut themselves down after 248 days of continual power on operation. A software counter in the generator's firmware, it was found, would overflow after that precise length of time. The Register is aware that this is not the only software-related problem to have plagued the 787 during its early years. Well, I won't continue to read
Isn't
that.
that a bit of an old-school fix, though, Matt? You know, can you fix my computer, please? Have you tried turning it on and off?
I mean, Windows 10 has less issues than some of the Microsoft predecessors, shall we say. I mean, many of us are old enough to remember Microsoft ME.
Oh, blimey, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, which was essentially something that you had to throw away after a couple of days usually. But it's...
There's a lot of worried people in the chat room wondering who has remembered to set the timer for 149 hours.
Well, yeah, this is it. I mean, by the sound of it, to be fair, it's the plane isn't dropping out of the sky. It's just you're losing some, important data, shall we say. But
what do you think, Max?
I'm just thinking if only Airbus had partnered with Apple and not with Microsoft. I think this probably would have worked out better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I could not agree with you more, Max.
I just have visions of having an Alexa on the flight deck and saying, "Alexa, could you set a timer for 149 hours, please?"
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the pilot could set it on his phone, I suppose, couldn't he? Ask Siri.
Just imagine halfway across the Atlantic. Your timer is 149.
Oh, flipping heck. What do we do now? Yeah, absolutely.
Control-Alt-Delete.
Yeah, I'm not... I don't think you have those shortcuts.
Used to be, is there a doctor on board? Now, is there an IT professional on board?
Absolutely,
Please
yeah.
Oh, well, there we go.
Anyone a Microsoft certified professional. Anyone on board know what they're doing. Yeah.
Well, they'll be all right if they've got you on board. Hey, man.
I mean, it's a worrying situation if my skills are able to sort out a problem on an aircraft. I find that very alarming.
We'll give it a go. Oh, mind you, I'll be okay.
Give it a go? That's not a phrase I want to hear when I'm in the air. Well, let's give it a go, shall we? Yeah.
If we get any trouble in November, Nev will be fine.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. No, you are taking the
Nev,
king of tech with you.
Can you sort that out,
absolutely.
please?
Just let him into the cockpit. He'll do a full reset. So, yes, a small part of me is thinking, if they've managed to solve it in the newer variants, why are they not just rapidly patching the firmware on these older aircraft? I don't understand. I'm surprised that the EASA is having to issue yet another directive to say, look, come on, guys, What are you doing here? I mean, this it just seems a bit odd. Why are they not just, every time one comes in for service, half the time all you got to do is plug in a USB stick and it does half of it for you.
I'm just reading the chat room.
Oh no!
Sorry.
Right, okay.
Neil
Anything
Lamwood,
that we can share with the group?
Neil Lamwood says if they'd partnered with Apple, you'd only be able to use one engine, and the plane would cost twice as much.
Hey, now look.
Who needs more than one engine?
Well, quite right, absolutely. Yes, I'm with you, Max. Yes,
and Jenny in Rome, hello to you, Jenny. She says that's a very dramatic photo behind Carlos.
It is a very dramatic photo behind Carlos. Yes, and thank you to Jonathan Warner for sending that in. Yeah, stop it.
Sorry.
Every time you do something silly, I'm going to turn your camera off. Anyway.
So, moving on to the next story, Max. This one is a kind of interesting concept.
Yeah, it's got an interesting twist to it as well, so stick around till the end for the twist. This comes from CNN Travel, so it says European manufacturer Airbus. Now, so we got to question the story. U.S. company reporting on Airbus, so they may have an axe to grind here. European manufacturer Airbus has created a concept aircraft inspired by the natural feathers of eagles, hawks, and other aerial predators. The bird of prey concept unveiled by Liam Fox, UK Secretary of State for International Trade at the Royal International Air Tattoo Air Show on Friday. Fox tweeted his support for the project alongside a video of the bird of prey, which has a set of feathers on the tail and each wingtip. Now, they don't say what those things are made of, but when you look at the photo, you can see, sure enough, there are some feather-like things on the aircraft. It says the theoretical design is for a hybrid electric turboprop aircraft, according to a statement on the Airbus website. Inspired by efficient mechanics of a bird, it has wing and tail structures that mimic those of a bird of prey, while featuring individually controlled feathers that provide active flight control. The aircraft would be capable of carrying up to 80 passengers and would burn 30 to 50% less fuel than comparable aircraft in operation today. Now, here's the rub. While the aircraft won't be built, all right, so it's just a concept. The aim of the project is to motivate the next generation of aeronautical engineers, or perhaps to confuse them altogether, according to Martin Aston, the senior manager at Airbus. Our bird of prey is designed to be an inspiration to young people and create a wow factor that will help them consider an exciting career in a crucially important aerospace sector. So anyway, fun little design. And when I first saw it, I thought, how on earth are they going to build this thing? And then, of course, you get to the end and you find out they're not.
They're not. I mean, a small part of me is really, again, I was looking at this picture and thinking, if this was the 1st of April, I'd be thinking this was some really kind of. No, don't get me wrong.
Right, of course.
It is cool. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like literally, what's the? It's I mean, the whole feathers and stuff. They move. That's the whole idea. I mean, these look fairly fixed. I mean, I'm sure somebody knows what they're doing. What
I'm just wondering how the rudder works.
The rudder?
Well, there isn't one.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Kind of.
Is that just because they're trying to make it
Well, I don't know about your birds over there in the UK, but over here in the US, our birds don't have rudders, so that's
good
a problem.
point. Yeah.
No, good point.
Yeah. See what you did there. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to see if there's anything. I'm just trying to see.
I'll tell you what they'll do. What they're going to do? They're going to release this as an Airfix model. That's what I think they'll probably do.
There you go. That's right. It's the little concept video that they're talking about. Look. Ooh.
I mean, it looks good.
Yeah, I mean, it looks exciting, doesn't it? Oh, hello.
No, Australian one there.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, it's just a huge amount of CGI currently. I mean, it's just like...
Looks like the A400M.
Yeah.
A400M engines.
And apparently the reason it's going to be so cost-effective fuel-wise, that thing runs on birdseed.
Yes, I like it. Yes, inspired by nature. Look, there we go.
Anyway.
No? Okay, just me then. Fair enough.
Moving swiftly on. The next story we've got this week is on the awesome Aviation Herald website. For those
an
of you
actual
who haven't been on there,
publication. Yes.
Take yourselves over there. So this is on the aviationherald.com. And this is an accident that happened on the 23rd of July at Lagos. And this was an Air Peace Boeing 737-300. Wow, that's quite an old bus, or aircraft I should say, performing flight P4-7191 from Port Harcourt to Lagos, Nigeria, with 133 passengers and 6 crew. Landed on Lagos's runway 18 right at around 11:20 local and 10:20 Zulu, but suffered a hard touchdown, causing both nose wheels to separate from the nose gear strut.
Look at that.
The aircraft skidded to a halt on the runway on main wheels and the rest of the nose gear strut, and there was one minor injury. The aircraft sustained substantial damage, as did the runway. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. So Nigeria's Accident Investigation Board have opened an investigation to the occurrence, stating that the aircraft nose wheels collapsed on landing on runway 18 right. There was one minor injury, as we said. The airline reported that due to a sudden weather change, the captain requested a longer international runway rather than a domestic runway. After landing safely while attempting to turn off the runway, the nose gear developed a problem and partially collapsed. Well, as you can see, the pictures there on there, there's not a lot left of that nose wheel gear, that's for sure. Most of it's laying in the grass. I think there's a wheel there in the grass.
I think it's safe to say,
Yeah. I mean, the aircraft had obviously landed. It was, as it says, it was taxiing, so I mean, it's just as well this didn't happen, just after the aircraft had touched down. Any thoughts, Max, apart from the fact this aircraft is ancient?
No, not really. I mean, it doesn't look good. I don't know why.
No, I think I did look this one up on the Airfleet's thing. I think this was 21 years old, this aircraft.
Wow, okay.
So, yeah, it's fairly old.
Yeah, but I mean, that isn't going to be a reason as to why this has occurred.
I think this is probably a case of a bit of rough ground, and these aren't built for off-road use.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That's one way of putting it, yeah.
Now, the next story, Matt, I chose this one especially for you because I think that...
why is it my heart sinks every time you say that?
As the person you are for flying, you would have appreciated this particular airline's tact.
Right, okay. All right, so it's the IFL Science is the website, iflscience.com.
I just love this headline.
And the headline is, Airline tweets the safest place in a plane to sit in case of a crash. Right,
yes,
okay. And what we presume was an ill-judged crack at gallows humour, a Dutch airline tweeted on Wednesday the seats least likely to survive in the case of an airplane crash. The tweet was... I don't want to read this story anymore. The tweet was posted from KLM's regional Twitter account based in India in response to a trivia question. The Washington Post reports it was taken down just 12 hours later and replaced with an apology saying the post was based on a publicly available aviation fact and isn't a KLM opinion. Right, yeah, I bet. It was never our intention to hurt anyone's sentiments. The original tweet used information based on an investigation conducted by Time magazine in 2015, itself based on numbers recorded in the Federal Aviation Administration's CSRTG aircraft accident database, which found slight differences in survival rates depending on seat location. It also included a graphic of a single seat atop a white cloud with the message, "Seats at the back are the safest." While it is true the study reported lower fatalities in the rear, 32% to be precise, than either in the middle at 39% or the front 38% of the plane, the results were based on just 17 crashes between 1985 and 2000. Fortunately, plane crashes are so rare and even rarer today than in 2000 that there just isn't very much data to pull them from. Well, that's comforting. I'm going to stop reading that story, Carlos. It's stressing me out.
It's not the tweet you really want to see from an airline.
It's not, especially if it was one of those where I had in-flight Wi-Fi and I found it whilst I was in the air. That would definitely.
I mean, it's almost as bad as kind of having a channel on board the IFE of air crash investigation series.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. Yeah. That's my idea of
I mean, for me, I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
You're not normal. You're not normal.
I spend many an evening watching air crash investigation.
Yes, but not whilst in the air.
So what's up, Max?
Well, I have a different take on the story. I think the safest seat is up front in first class, that we get on and off before the fights break out.
Good point.
Yeah, good point.
Good point, well made. And to be honest with you, in first class, you're probably so sozzled you won't care. There is that.
Yeah,
You'd be a little bit more relaxed about the whole thing, certainly. Yes.
Yeah, they did apologise on Twitter though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tweet,
yeah,
so.
yeah. I guess it was just meant as a bit of harmless fun. I just you can't.
I think it was fun.
Well, you just can't. Well, I think it was probably tweeted with in jest. But I mean, this isn't something that this isn't something. People are always going to be a bit overly sensitive about a plane crashing, aren't they?
Yeah,
with good reason. Let's be honest. Yeah.
So, Max, the next story for you is on our favourite news feed for aviation.
Well, you've got a double whammy here. Not only is it Ryanair, but it's also about the 737 Max. So
oh no!
This is an update, I think, on the story we covered.
Oh, is it?
A few weeks ago.
Right. Okay.
Yep, pretty funny. This comes from FlightGlobal.com, and I know you gave me the story because new name for Ryanair 737 Max is not actually new. While several media reports are claiming that Ryanair has rebranded the Boeing 737 MAX in the aftermath of the re-engine type's grounding, the chosen 737-8200 designation is not new. Photos circulating on social media purport to show a Ryanair 737 MAX 8 with the MAX name no longer on the nose, possibly in response to perceptions that the MAX brand is tainted by poor publicity after the fleet was grounded 5 months ago. The aircraft instead carries the identity 737-8200. Although the switch is notable, the name, contrary to a number of reports, is not a new designation for the aircraft and actually predates both the MAX grounding and the two fatal accidents. EASA has been referring to the 737, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, that's EASA with an extra U in the middle, has been referring to the 737-8200 in documents such as its 2015 annual activity report, almost a year before the first 737 MAX delivery. Designation has frequently been included in U.S. federal regulatory filings from Boeing and the U.S. FAA since at least early 2017. And they just go on to show some diagrams of different versions of the 737-8200. Anyway, I think the best comment I've seen in the chat room was from Neil, who said that they all rebranded the 737 Trescott.
Yeah. Do you want to put your name to that though? I mean,
and then the following headlines will be Max Trescott becomes multi-billionaire.
Right. Okay.
As I responded to Neil in the chat room, I said that this way I'm going to be able to double the payments that I get from Boeing right now.
Yeah, that is true. That is a good point.
Man's worth a fortune.
Yeah,
we've got a billionaire on the show, Matt.
Absolutely, we will have by the end of the show, by the sound of it. Yeah, absolutely.
So next story is on AIN Online, and sad news because we were looking forward to this one coming out soon. This is the Boeing 777X first delivery. Or first flight, I should say, delayed until 2020. So Boeing confirmed Wednesday this week that it's moved the target for the first flight of the 777X to early next year from the second half of 2019, following consultations with engine maker General Electric, whose new GE9X continues to suffer delays while the engine company redesigns a stator in the front part of the compressor that has shown more wear than anticipated during testing. Speaking during the company's second quarter earnings call on Wednesday, Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg said schedules still call for first delivery by the end of 2020, while hedging somewhat on the certainty of the timeline. We know there is clear pressure on that schedule, he conceded. The company believes that it can hold 777 delivery rates at 3.5 aircraft per month. How can you deliver a half of an aircraft? I don't really work that one out.
Well, just like miss off the wings.
Despite this schedule slip by maintaining rates of the 777-300ER and 777 Freighter, he said that we're seeing continued demand for the 777, particularly around the freighter market, so we're feathering in with the current revised schedule, and really that's an opportunity to meet the demands of our customers but minimise the financial impact on us, said the Boeing CFO Greg Smith. Muilenburg, meanwhile, expressed satisfaction with the development headway Boeing has made with the rest of the 777X. He said that on the airplane side of the effort, we've been very pleased with the progress, said Muilenburg, and who noted also that over the last quarter the company had completed final 777X gauntlet tests, including airplane level systems integration trials in the factory and low and high speed taxi tests. Calling the 777X one of the cleanest development programs that we've ever seen, Muilenburg nevertheless expressed disappointment in the engine disruption, and GE is working through that challenge and getting their arms around a precise schedule for recovery, he noted. He said that we'll be proceeding through the engine testing. That solution becomes clear. The issue involving the compressor component surfaced a little more than 3 weeks before the start of the June Paris Air Show, while engineers ran the engines outside its normal operating envelope during block testing. Well, it's a shame. I was hoping to see this one flying later on this year on its first test flights, and I'm really looking forward as well to seeing those folding wingtips, because I'd like to see those working in action. But are you a big fan of the 777, Max?
Oh, absolutely. It's fun watching them zip overhead. The arrivals to San Francisco go right smack over Palo Alto Airport where I'm teaching, so often look overhead, and they pass overhead at 4,000. So, yeah, fun to see them go by.
So, Matt, next story, and pick this one especially for you again. You'll be gutted, though, when you read the headline, because this story was... I think this was made for an airline that you would love to fly on.
Right. Okay. The picture is filling me with dread, I'm not going to lie. So this is on thetelegraph.co.uk, and the headline is, Disney denies rumours of a US airline launch.
Oh.
Disney has denied reports it is planning to launch its own airline in the US, with a spokesperson telling the Telegraph Travel there is no truth at all in the rumours. Specialist news site JustDisney.com this month published a now-deleted report speculating that branded planes would ferry guests in and out of Orlando, Florida, home of its Walt Disneyland World, the most visited holiday resort on the planet, to airports including Detroit, Chicago, New York, LaGuardia, and Los Angeles International. It also said that the Disney company was poised to start acquiring small regional carriers in 2021.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it is a bit.
Wouldn't you love to see an airline, a Disney airline?
surely this was where perhaps because I think Virgin have done something similar in the past, haven't they? Where they've done like something to what's the Universal Studios, haven't they? They've done something similar, haven't they? Where they've done a sort of flight, and in fact, actually, they did something. Do you remember Saturday Night Takeaway here in the UK? They did a flight out. They did it was a Virgin Atlantic plane that was rebranded that took everybody out to
Disney World.
To Disney World. So it's not unusual for a plane to be sort of brand, especially most of the stuff that they're doing here, where it's basically just the, what do they call the
headrest covers.
Essentially all they've done is change those. So it's and these will just be vinyl stickers, won't they?
Don't you think it would be a nightmare,
on the luggage bins?
Disney and having an airline, Disney airline with all those kids on board.
My idea of actual hell, if I'm honest, I can't think of anything more frightening.
But you deal with this on a daily basis, Matt. That's why I chose.
Yeah, I know. But I'm also, if you're ever with me and there are children on board, I'm also incredibly mean.
Shut up, children!
Exactly, absolutely. They're making too much noise. As I say, I think there was. It's probably that Delta or someone like that had maybe got a carriage deal to do a few specialist flights, maybe by rebranding one of their planes, and perhaps it's all got a bit out of hand. Max, I can't see Disney sort of spending this kind of money to launch their own airline, surely.
I think there's just one downside to the whole concept for Disney. Can you imagine when people start to board the airplane, and just as they get on, they look left and into the cockpits, they see Goofy and Mickey Mouse?
Yes, that would make me nervous. Yes, I'll give you
for
that.
The door.
Good point. Yeah. I'd be like, I am out of here. I am getting off this plane. I am off. Yeah, absolutely.
This is a real Mickey Mouse operation. Yeah.
Oh, you're worse than Carlos. Stop it, please.
By the way, I think one of the tougher flights in the U.S. is flying into Orlando, which is close to Disney World, and it's just it's families and exhausted kids, and it's like I try and avoid flying into Orlando.
Presumably for obvious reasons, it's also quite congested airspace around there as well because of the sheer number of flights.
Oh, sure, absolutely. But yeah, for me, it's just the passenger experience. Yes. Too many exhausted kids on the airplane. When I go to Sun and Fun, most people fly into Orlando. I fly into Tampa, which is west of the Sun and Fun. That way, I avoid the family crowds in Orlando.
A very sensible man.
Very good. So, Max, we left the last story for you, and I thought I'd just slide this little GA story in, especially for you.
Well, thank you very much. I went and found a different version of the story because the one you chose won't let me view it. Apparently, I've viewed their site too many times in the past.
Okay.
The old paywall. So I have pulled up a story with the same topic from AINonline.com, and it says Embry-Riddle looks to restock their Cessna Skyhawk fleet. I saw this announcement earlier this week from AirVenture. Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which is the largest aviation university here in the United States. And by the way, it's quite a prestigious aviation school. Not only do they train a heck of a lot of pilots, they also have a lot of other programs all the way up to the PhD level, and they produce more aeronautical engineers than any other university in the United States.
Wow.
Which is, yeah, it's just a remarkable place. They're down in Daytona Beach, and they also have a campus in Prescott, Arizona, so pretty big organization. They've agreed to purchase at least 60 Skyhawks, Cessna Skyhawks, the 172, over the next 4 years. And they say, in keeping with Embry's rigorous focus on aviation safety, new aircraft for our fleet were selected following exhaustive evaluation by a team of experts for both our Prescott, Arizona, and Daytona Beach, Florida campuses. We're honored to extend our successful 21-year relationship with Textron Aviation to replenish the Embry-Riddle fleet with Skyhawk aircraft to provide our students with a highly effective and reliable training platform. They say since 2014, the school has purchased more than 75 airplanes from Textron, mostly Skyhawks. Now, there was another announcement earlier this week at AirVenture as well. Cessna inked an order for 100 Skyhawks. I don't remember over what time period, but probably over the next 4 or 5 years, from ATP, which is a large training provider that has probably a dozen or more locations across the United States. So collectively in 1 week, they have sold 160 Skyhawks. Now, I looked it up. Would you like to guess how many Skyhawks Cessna sold last year?
It'll be a lot because they're such a good trainer. It's going to be... It must be well over... I'd say... I'll have a guess and say 4,000.
Okay. They sold 129 last year.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So they just sold out more than a year's worth of production in one foul swoop.
Wow.
So yeah, historically the 172, I believe the numbers are they've sold about 46,000 of them over 50 years. So the heyday, the high water mark was back in the late 70s when aircraft production was at its peak. But in recent years, Cessna piston sales have been dropping off, but it looks like everything is starting to head back up now because there's such demand for airline pilots that a lot of these schools are tooling up and buying more aircraft. In fact, people will say that if you want to buy a used 172 these days, they have become extremely expensive over the last couple of years.
I know I've done some of my flight training when I was learning to fly in a 172, and I have to say it was enjoyable. I'd done most of my training was in a 150, but I must say that the few hours that I'd done in a 172 were real good fun. It's such an easy aircraft to fly, especially to trim in cruise with the power settings and stuff. I found myself, but even though the version I had was, I think mine was a 1973 172 that I flew. But no, I mean they're brilliant for flight schools. I mean they can take a hammer, and as Max will know very well, they're built like brick outhouses.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Got a lot of love for the 172 Max.
It's kind of a universal training aircraft. I would say more pilots are trained in the 172 these days than any other aircraft type. And if you travel around the country and you want to rent one someplace else, then you're most likely to find a 172 for rent. So it's kind of the universal, getting started airplane.
Well, and also just you're sort of saying only selling sort of like 400 last year or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, but then if you're saying the one that you learnt to fly in was what, 1974? Did you say?
Yeah, I think it was either 73 or 74.
So I mean, you're not going to need to buy new ones very often then if they'll last that long, I suppose.
No, I think there's quite a good used market in the UK. There's various websites where you can buy used GA aircraft.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of them are old. Some are even in the late 60s. Some of the earlier Cessnas, and they still look well. They've been obviously looked after. They look very good, in very good condition.
Indeed.
So we are going to play something next for you. It's a very special segment that was sent in to us from Armando, And we're going to play this out for you, and then we're going to come back and have a chat with Max this week, because we're going to skip the military this week because we've got Max here, so we'll have a nice chat with Max after this. But this segment is a very special segment indeed. It is the interview that Armando done with Amanda Simpson, who I said was the vice president for research and technology at Airbus Americas. And we're going to play that for you right now.
All right, team. So I'm here with Miss Amanda Simpson, who is the Vice President of Research and Technology for Airbus Americas, correct?
That's correct.
And this is an interview that we were offered by Airbus, and for PTUK, we absolutely took advantage of it to have somebody with such an accomplished personal and professional career. So thank you, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Orlando. It's my honor to talk with you all.
Yeah, and we are at Oshkosh, so we are surrounded by aviation, and it's just the most amazing show. So why don't we just start with your personal story? How did you get into aviation, and how did you end up here at Airbus?
Well, thanks. It's I've had incredible opportunities that I've pursued over my career, a long and storied career, I might add. When I started in college, I found out that one of our graduates had just been accepted by NASA to be a space shuttle astronaut. And to me, that was my ultimate goal, was to be an astronaut. And I thought, wow, if George could get there, I have to figure out how to do it, and I can just follow his path. And what he did in college was a scholarship program that took 4 students a year and taught them to fly as a practical application of the science and technology that we were exposed to in the classroom. So I knew I had to do that, and I did get into it my first year. And by the time I graduated, I was a commercial instrument-rated pilot, and it stuck. I mean, that was just, I found a passion. And over the course of my career, it's that blending of the technology and the aviation aerospace background that has propelled me. I first job in aerospace was working on the prototype for the AH-64 Apache attack helicopter with Hughes Helicopter. Then I went to work for Douglas Aircraft Company doing customer service on DC-9s and DC-10s. Then I went to work for Hughes Aircraft Company, where I actually oversaw a vacuum tube production line. So you kind of have to joke, but probably not too many people even remember what vacuum tubes are. But these weren't the little ones that were in the back of your television set. These were big 50-pound up units that were the main source of energy for military radars, for airborne radars. I worked the F-14, the F-15 programs. And after 5 years running that, I got an opportunity to go back into the aviation department and become a flight test pilot for Hughes Aircraft at the time. The job was to direct our operations or direct our tests from on board the aircraft. So I was flying T-39s, Saberliners, a variety of different aircraft, and we were conducting tests. Not testing the aircraft, but conducting tests on systems, missiles, radars, and other things that we would mount on the aircraft and simulate their flights. And I did that for, I'll just say, a long time. Got to fly a lot of interesting aircraft, some military, a lot of civilian aircraft that we modified, and had a wonderful career doing that. One day, got a phone call from the White House asking if I would join the Obama administration, and I'm not one to say no to the President of the United States. So I packed up my bags and moved out to D.C., and after a short stint with the Department of Commerce doing export controls, I moved over to the Department of Defense. I did acquisitions for the Army for a couple of years, then I ran their energy department, and then the Secretary of Defense asked me to take over as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy. And so I had oversight of anything that was energy related within the United States military worldwide. So it was the fuel for all the jets and ships and tanks and trucks, but also batteries for dismounted soldiers and Marines, remote outposts. It was just fascinating. And I got to touch, well, anything in the military had an on-off switch was part of my purview. And of course, everything has an on-off switch. So I got involved with many, many programs. And like many things in government, when the administration changes, so do all the people. And I was shown the door. And after a little while of attempting a retirement, I decided I couldn't handle that right now and decided to find a job. And here I am now at Airbus. And it's great. It's great. Airbus in the Americas is a little enclave of the bigger company. It is. We have all the different parts of Airbus. We have the commercial aircraft, we have helicopters, we have defense, we have space, we do air traffic control systems, we do, it's just all varied. And I'm trying to, well, I actually am pulling together all the technology and innovation we're doing across all these different opportunities. And it's really, and collaborating, of course, with our European counterparts.
One of my opportunities in my military career was to work in research and development up in Rome Labs. Oh. So, and I know one of my challenges going in there as somebody coming in from the field was to manage expectations. And we had young engineers that were super just motivated and wanted to change the world and come up with great technologies. But we had, one of our challenges was the government acquisitions process. So now, having done that, and now being at Airbus, what are some of the differences that you've seen in the ability to transition technology out to the industry?
Well, doing technology development inside commercial industry, which I did before I came, so that went to the government, and certainly now, is very different from what happens inside the government. It's a different acquisition process. Commercial aspects are more nimble, more agile, can respond to changes. It's actually easier to terminate something if it's not a good idea than in the government. But at the same time, it's also, there's so much to choose from. There's so many opportunities. It's finding those golden needles in that haystack that are worth pursuing. And here in the Americas, particularly in North America, there are such incredible opportunities. I mean, here we are at the Experimental Aircraft Association, which is full of innovators, people who are building one-off aircraft, who are coming up with ideas that no one's really tried before. And so tapping into that spirit is why I'm here this week.
So how do you capitalize? When you see something come across your desk or your office, and how do you capitalize on that innovation, and how do you pick a project that says this is something we're going to invest in? What sort of things are you looking for?
Well, so I have to look at it with the eye of what would this mean to Airbus, and it's I say, how do we make our products better, and how do we make better products? Because it's not just what we're building today, it's what we're going to be building tomorrow and how we build it. So it's the manufacturing process as well as the technology that's going to go into our next generation. And it could be anything. So sometimes it's, yeah, that could be something, or wow, that really could be something. But of course, as anything else, we have to coordinate it with all the different activities that are going on globally. So I try to find the best here in the Americas and compare it to what's the best going on elsewhere in the world.
And is there pretty frequent communication with Airbus Europe and Airbus Americas, or do they sort of let the American branch do its own thing? How is that related?
Oh, we're very interconnected. I'm on the phone with them weekly or emails. I seem to be in Europe many times a year to coordinate, because we are a global organization. We're not a separate part, and we have to be coordinated.
So from what I understand, Airbus has the major facilities, at least, are in Wichita and Mobile, correct?
On the commercial aircraft side, right. We certainly are building helicopters in Columbus, Mississippi, as well as Grand Prairie, Texas. And just yesterday, we cut the ribbon on the OneWeb satellite facility at the Kennedy Space Center, where we're going to be building up to 2 satellites a day for the OneWeb low Earth orbit communication system. So there's a lot going on here in the U.S.
So as Airbus invests more and more in the U.S., what are some of the things that are unique to Airbus? Because I know your manufacturing facilities in Mobile, at least, which I got a chance to see from afar once, were revolutionary. I mean, it was the way Airbus is manufacturing aircraft was just anything beyond the scope of what the average person understands, and it was nothing short of impressive. So how do you think Airbus is leading the way on those manufacturing processes and some of the amazing aircraft that, like the A350 and the A220?
So, of course, in Mobile, we're building the 320s, 321s, and soon the 220s. And I will tell you, the first time that I walked out on the floor of Mobile, I was looking around going, wow, it doesn't look like we're building aircraft very much differently than when I was at Douglas back in the late 70s. But then when you start digging into some of the processes, and there are some novel and unique capabilities. And one of the things we're looking at now is to try to bring in more robotics, more ways to assist our workers so that there's less rework, more precision, and that we can do things in a more efficient manner. So, right now in Mobile, we're pushing out about 5 airliners a month, which is pretty impressive, being that facility only opened several years ago. But we think within about a year and a half, there will be 12 aircraft coming out of that factory a month. So that's a huge increase. And to deal with that, we have to figure out how to do things more efficiently and more effectively and get more use out of our facilities and out of our employees.
And one of the other just great initiatives that I saw Airbus just recently in the news was with the A320 and partnering with Delta on the biofuels and sustainable fuels. So I saw that just recently, and it has to be the way of the future, isn't it? These sustainable fuels. And
certainly we're delivering aircraft from Mobile on the sustainable fuel. I mean, you saw that was I think the 50th aircraft delivered to Delta. And the sustainable fuels are important, and we have to work with, in that case, the fuel industry to help develop the supply for that on a global basis. But that's a near-term solution. We have some longer-term goals to really reduce the emissions and eventually eliminate them entirely. But that's going to be a challenge that we're looking at.
Yeah, I know. I was up in Friedrichshafen for Aero Expo, and on the general aviation side, Siemens and Magnus aircraft were really trying to get the electric aircraft out there and into the general population. Is that something that Airbus is looking at?
So we're partnered with Siemens on a program called the eFan X. Now, the eFan was an all-electric aircraft that made one of the first true electric crossings of the English Channel a few years back. The eFan X is taking a airliner. It's a BA-146, I believe, and replacing one of its 4 engines with a 2 megawatt electric motor. And we're going to find out, you think about that, 2 megawatts. That's an incredible amount of electricity and power that has to be controlled. So we're going to be starting to experiment. And that aircraft, we think, will be flying either later this year or early next year. And that's going to be a step forward to understanding how to do that on large aircraft. But meanwhile, if you were to go downstairs, here you'd see our Vahana aircraft, which of course is 100% electric. Its twin has done well over 100 flights now, and it's completely self-piloted, all electric, zero emission, and that's going to be what is required as urban air mobility becomes more of a demand in our transportation ecosystem.
Yeah, and that really is it. We do articles and stories almost weekly about either electric aircraft, the urban air mobility, and then in addition to that, what is the human's role in the loop, or on the loop, as we used to say, right? So where do you see? So we have a pilotless aircraft downstairs that is safe and has proven to be safe. Yeah. Do you see that technology perhaps going larger or wider into the industry, the aerospace industry?
Well, I think it has to. And, we're seeing it in a variety of fronts. You may be aware that the U.S. military is well on their way of developing the unmanned refueling aircraft. Energy, just in case you hadn't made the connection. Because it's going to be necessary for a variety of reasons. One, it can do the job better. You don't have to put all the
life support systems.
Exactly, the life support systems. But also, it reduces the demand for pilots, in that case with the United States Navy. And the demand for pilots is only going to be increasing. I heard some statistic that over the next 15 years, there's going to be a requirement for more pilots than have ever been certified in the history of aviation. And to keep up with that, we have to find new ways to be efficient with our flight crews. And that's going to be bringing more autonomy into the cockpit. I mean, let's think about it. When commercial aviation started, there were 5 people in the cockpit. And then there were 4, and then there were 3, and now we're down to 2. Is there going to be a next step? I think it has to happen.
Yeah. And one of the other great things that I saw Airbus working on was the bird of prey. So
isn't that cool?
It was probably the coolest thing I've ever seen in aviation. So biologically inspired engineering. It's an airplane that looks like a bird. Well, actually, you can tell me how you guys ended up with that concept.
Well, I was not part of that project. I mean, I heard about it about the same time that most of you did. It is inspired by the bird of prey. It has on the ends of its wings winglets that are individually controlled, like the flight feathers of a bird, and its tail is more like a soaring bird. So it's not something that we're going to build, but it is a concept that we're using to inspire and think about how the future of aviation is going to look like. Let's think outside the box. And what can we learn from nature that we can apply to our products?
Yeah. So, and I'm sure that was an engineer or a group of engineers that came up with an innovative idea, and I feel like we throw that around, the innovation and just new ideas. How do we revolutionize an industry? And one of my goals in my career was to capitalize on the diversity of engineers and developers that we had, at least in the Department of Defense, and that included young engineers and more experienced engineers. So how do you see that going? How do you capitalize on that new push for diversity in engineering?
I saw a study recently that polled young people and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And number 1 on the list was like YouTube blogger. Now nothing against you, Armando, but the bottom of the list was astronaut. And that's okay. I get that a blogger was not available when I was growing up, or even a concept, but it's the inspiration towards the aerospace community that we've lost, and so we need to rekindle that, particularly in the minorities, in women, bringing those people to the workforce that bring those diverse ideas. Because if we, I remember back in the 70s, all the guys were wearing white shirts with blue ties, and they all looked the same, and they all thought the same. And it's from those diverse groups that we get these unique and novel ideas and the acceptance to pursue them. So we got to continue to inspire people. And I'm telling you, this air venture is one of those where you walk around and you've got to be inspired. The creativity, the opportunities, and like you said, just the sound of the round engines flying by, remembering our history, but at the same time watching these high-tech jets fly around is pretty impressive.
How do you think what's the best way to get out there? So AirVenture is a great example. How do we get aviation and aerospace engineering and all the associated engineering and STEM subjects? How do we get that out to the general public? What do we need to do different?
Well, I don't know if it's do something different, but it's do what we used to do, which was engage our youth. And I'm not an expert in that field, but it seems that we've gotten too rote in our education process rather than letting the imaginations drive what is unique to each student, and find out what inspire each of them. It's not going to be everybody. Aerospace engineering isn't for everyone. Being a pilot isn't for everyone. But I bet there's a lot more people out there that would be interested in it and should be pursuing it.
So if we had a high school senior sitting here with us right now, what advice would you give them on entering, if they were already interested in entering the industry?
Go for it.
Yeah.
I think so many people think that it's about pursuing the monetary returns, but it's not. It's about finding what brings you pleasure, happiness, and a feeling of contribution and commitment to society. I mean, I can look to the skies and say, I'm part of that. I helped bring that about. I'm helping move millions of people around the planet each year. I'm helping from my past make sure that we are secure and in our defense. And that means more to me than having a big bank account. Even though I'd like that airplane again.
Yeah, and there's a lot of airplanes for sale out there. I'm honored to be here sitting with you. Just super grateful that we got the opportunity to chat with you, and I look forward to seeing what Airbus comes up with in the next couple of years.
It's going to be pretty impressive. We got some really interesting things we're pursuing.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little segment there from Armando. I know we always get first kind of dibs on this sort of stuff when we get stuff sent in, don't we, from Armando? We get to watch these things before the show, and I watched this yesterday. I texted Matt and Armando saying, "Oh, it's really good segment. I love it, absolutely love it." And it was really good. So thanks a lot for that, Armando.
Yeah,
very interesting indeed, and also good to see women in aviation. That's the best thing.
Yeah, it's great, and what a fantastic piece it is. It's just and fresh from Osh as well. I mean, bless him, he's actually edited that while he's been in the on site, which is fantastic. So we've got another little piece that we're going to play shortly, but first, I think it's time to have a little chat with our esteemed guest.
So again, this week we have Max Trescott on the show with us. So again, welcome Max onto the show. Thanks for taking time out of your busy flight schedule to join us.
Did you say you want to have a little chinwag? Is that what you said?
Yes, do you know what? That'd be jolly splendid. If you could squeeze us in, we'd be eternally grateful, certainly.
Excellent. Yeah, we don't use that expression here, so I don't even really know what it means, but I think it means chatting.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you've caught us out.
So Max, we last saw you back on, I think you refreshed my memory earlier, on episode 172 of the show.
It was then, about 2 years ago in July, and that was when you guys made the big announcement. You made the big announcement that Neb was going to full-time host at that point.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's his 2-year anniversary, but he didn't show up for it.
How rude. Absolutely.
So what's been going on in the world of Max Trescott in the last few years then? Obviously, you're still doing your CFI and stuff, the training the young pilots of the future.
Sure. So let's see, between when we last talked, I decided to teach full-time in Cirrus. So just a little under 2 years ago, I realized, I like these planes a lot, and there's a real need for training in them. And it was kind of odd. As soon as I said, nope, I'm not going to teach any longer in all these other aircraft, my schedule got more full. I got busier. I had to raise my rates because I had no free time.
Yeah,
so it was kind of ironic. And the reason I did that, well, twofold. One, I really think they are safer aircraft because they've got the CAPS, the Cirrus airframe parachute system, where basically if you've got a problem, you pull the handle, and then you've got a huge parachute that just lowers, the entire aircraft. You got to be above 500 feet above the ground in some models, 600 feet in other models to do that. But it really does add a layer of safety that's just not available in the other aircraft. But these aircraft are more technologically advanced, so that kind of appeals to my inner geek. My background is in electrical engineering, and so I just love all the the different features that are available in these aircraft. So these days, spending just a lot of time teaching in Cirrus. Oh, and I went back and I listened to 172 yesterday, and in it, you guys asked me what was my favorite airplane and what airplane I wanted to fly next and so on. I said the Vision Jet, the Cirrus Vision Jet. And later that year, I indeed got my type rating. Actually, later last year. So about a year after we last talked, I did get my type rating. And that's pretty intensive training. It's, I think a lot of people who get checked down in a piston aircraft, they may spend 5, 10, 15 hours learning about that aircraft. Here it was a solid 9 days, of just drinking, eating, sleeping aircraft stuff. I mean, it really was dawn to dusk kind of, work. All the training for the Cirrus SF-50 Vision Jet is back in Knoxville, where they have a large multi-million-dollar, full-size simulator that, rocks and rolls. And they've set it up so that they've got space to add 2 more of those because demand is going to be increasing. The Cirrus Vision Jet, they sold, let me think, they shipped 60 of them last year. And then they shipped, roughly 30 or 40 the year before. So there are a little over 100 of them out in the wild. But last year it was the best-selling jet. So they shipped more jets than any other jet company did of a particular model, which is pretty remarkable when you consider that they just started shipping them a little over almost 2.5 years ago now at this point. So between those 3 models, the SR-20, SR-22, and the Vision Jet, I'm staying pretty busy. But also got a couple writing projects, and that's why I'm not at AirVenture this week. I've been to AirVenture probably a dozen times over the last 20 years, I would guess. I was there last year, but just decided this year, I've got so many little projects that I'm trying to make some headway on that I figured I'd stick around, and so far that's worked out. I had a little bit of time in my flying schedule this week where I could dedicate about 2 days to some of the writing projects. So yeah, keeps me pretty busy.
Max, when you do the training and stuff in the Cirrus aircraft, for someone who's done most of their training like myself in a 150 or 172, how easy is it to transition from the Cessna product with steam gauges essentially over to the Cirrus, which is like going from an Amstrad 64 across to an iPad?
Sure. So I think the first question I ask people is, do you like technology? Do you use a smartphone? Do you have an iPhone or an Android? And if the answer to those things is yes, then it's well within your grasp. If on the other hand people are like, no, I really like this flip phone. It does everything that I ever need to do. And by the way, I know a flight instructor recently who showed me his flip phone that he still carries.
Wow.
I was absolutely stunned.
Impressive stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't run ForeFlight on that. That's for sure.
No, I can imagine. Yeah. Actually, we discovered something quite interesting with Armando, actually, because they now do a ForeFlight software that's designed for people with simulators, where you've got like flight sim and stuff. It's a powerful bit of kit, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. So there are some interfaces, but I don't know the specifics of how that works out. Is there more you can tell me about it?
We got Armando would be the man for all that, but he was sort of demonstrating it.
Yeah, I've seen it in operation.
Yeah.
When Armando was based here in the UK before he moved back to the US, he'd got a sim set up in his basement and using X-Plane. I think it was X-Plane. And had ForeFlight set up with that to use.
Yeah, and it could interface with
actual
ForeFlight, so you could do all your flight plans and everything using ForeFlight.
It's very good.
Yeah, it was impressive stuff, actually. So as if you were doing a real flight, essentially.
Actually, we've got a question for you, Max, from the chat room from Tony S. He says that if you would have been working for the Cirrus design team, is there anything you would have done differently with the design of the aircraft?
Tough tough question. I really admire good design. That's just one of the things that I'm really drawn to. And I've been particularly drawn to the Cirrus Jet because I think the design is really excellent. There's so many first impressions you get when you jump into the aircraft, which hold through. For example, it looks roomy. It looks like the cockpit is very streamlined and simplified, and it's easy to get into. Let me just give you some points of comparison. By the way, I think the simple answer to the question is no. I can't think of anything I would do differently. But let me tell you about some of the things that I think really distinguish it. For example, I have taught in a citation from time to time. And for me to climb into a Cessna citation, I'm a little over 6 feet tall. And to get into the right front seat, it takes probably 45 to 50 seconds just to kind of pretzel my body into that space. I mean, if you ever had to get out in a hurry, forget it. It's not going to happen. Climbing into the Cirrus Vision Jet, if you're going to sit in one of the front seats, it's like sitting in my office chair here. I mean, that's how easy it is to get into. Both seats slide back probably a full 3+ feet. So there's just tons of room to get in. You slide them forward. So that's incredibly simple. And then most jets, when you're in the cockpit and you look around you, you see switches over every square inch of space. And I get that. I mean, as engineers, we're trained for efficiency. And I think one definition of efficiency is, oh, there's a blank spot there. We can put a switch right there. So you just end up with, stuff everywhere. They took really the opposite approach with the Vision Jet. They looked at how to eliminate everything and to just put it into touchscreen controllers. So basically, a lot of the functions that had switches are now interact with a touchscreen controller. To turn functions on and off. And so the result is you have an incredibly clean design from a cockpit standpoint. It almost looks like you're getting into a luxury car. You've got the glass panels right in front of you. You've got a huge windshield above it. You've got a couple little controls down below it, but then you've got nothing off to the sides. There's nothing above and to the right, above and to the left, along the sides. So it's just a really, really clean design. But here's the most remarkable thing. If you look at the vents, I used to look at the vents on this and go, oh, geez, it looks like I'm in a car. Well, one of the little details that I learned when I went through the training is those vents come from Ford. The air vents that are in the front, there's one on each side. They are from the Ford F-150 pickup truck. And it turns out that Ford would not sell them the vents. So I'm told that they buy them from a local Ford dealer as spare parts.
Way.
They put them in. But they're beautiful. I mean, they're kind of silver. They got great little louvers and nice round shape. And, they're built, tough. And so, I think they just did a really nice job of taking a vision of a simplified cockpit and implementing it. One of the things that they did is they made sure that they kept the main displays down a little bit lower, so that creates more space for a window. So you've got a wraparound view that really goes from wing to wing with virtually no interruptions in it, and it's large. It's not like you're staring out through some little slit in front of you. It's like you've got big windows in front of you. So I think part of the name Vision Jet is you've got a great view, and another part of it was just kind of a vision for what a beautifully designed jet could look like.
So these the Vision Jet Max, I was just reading the specs. Cabin height 4 foot 1 inch. Mm-hmm. That's fairly.
Yeah, so you're not going to stand up on it, run up and down the aisle. But I think there are relatively few light jets in which you can do that.
Mm. But it does look absolutely amazing. And also, I was just looking at as well that the actual performance kind of stats and stuff on 30. Where are we? Climb rate, maximum operating altitude 31,000 feet, which is pretty impressive.
Getting up there, yeah. The first version of the jet only went up to 28,000 feet. Then they basically did some work with the engine manufacturer and reprogrammed the output thrust schedule. We're able to get it up a little bit higher, get a little bit more thrust out of it at the higher altitudes, which to me was fascinating. Who would have thought that you basically can get more power out of a jet by, twiddling with the software for the engine?
And also, this all features as well the CAPS system. on the Vision Jet as well. It still has, with the SR-22, and this has the cap system as well, which is quite.
It does. It works very differently. With the SR-20 and SR-22, it's kind of a hardwired connection between the handle and the rocket. And essentially, when you pull that handle, there's a wire that drops a firing pin, if you will, into the rocket. And it's a significant rocket, even on the 20s and the 22s. I think they said they would take like it would, if you were hanging onto that rocket on the ground when it fired, apparently it'll lift like a 180-pound person 200 feet in the air. I mean, it's a large rocket to kind of extract that parachute safely and get the lines, far enough away from the aircraft and up over the tail. In the Vision Jet, instead of it coming out from behind the cockpit, it actually comes out in front of the cockpit. So as you're looking through the window, I hope I never see this for real, but you're going to be looking at the parachute, jumping up in front of you and going above you.
Wouldn't you be hanging? Would you be hanging down tail first, or tail first in that situation?
Well, so in the 20s and the 22s, when you pull the parachute, you're initially actually pitched downward rather significantly, which is why you don't want to pull it if you're below 500-600 feet, depending upon the model. But within a few seconds, the rear lines lengthen, which has the effect of dropping the tail back down, so that you then have an aircraft that's relatively level coming down. With the Vision Jet, I believe that it's programmed to initially kind of swoop upwards to reduce speed, but it actually uses a computer to control it. So instead of having this kind of direct, you pull it and it goes, it can take up to 30 seconds as the autopilot attempts to slow the aircraft, back below a certain speed. And then if it hasn't succeeded in doing that, then eventually it just says, okay, we're gonna fire this. So yeah, you've got to be at least 1,000 feet off the ground to use the parachute there. But frankly, I don't think we're going to see the parachute used nearly as much in the Vision Jet as we have in the piston aircraft, for a lot of reasons. Most of the approaches when you're coming in to land in a jet, it's the long straight-in approach. You're lined up from 10 miles out, everything's nice and stable. You don't run into the kinds of problems that people run into when they're flying a traffic pattern, where you are constantly making turns and making speed adjustments. And if you end up high or fast, then you have an unstable approach as you're headed down toward the runway. I just think that the kinds of situations that you get into in smaller aircraft, are going to be fewer of those. So it may be quite a while before we see a parachute pulled on the Vision Jet.
Now, Max, obviously you've spent a lot of time, with the Cirrus SR-22, and you can obviously do the Vision Jet kind of rating as well. What are the sort of expenses for that? Because obviously everyone knows it costs a fortune to learn to fly anyway. But obviously adding on the extra bits and pieces that you've done, is that quite costly in the US?
Costly to what? Get checked out to learn to fly this aircraft?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I would say that, if you look at an SR-20, a minimum checkout time where I teach is probably pretty close to 10 hours. Might be a little bit longer on an SR-22. So yeah, if you were checking out in a 182, you might do that in 5 hours or less. So yeah, I think the systems are more complex. There's more to know, and so the checkout times are longer, and that does add to the expense of flying the aircraft.
So do you do most of your training then, Max, with the Cirrus, or do you still do some flight training in the old venerable 172 or 150?
I have one student left in 172. He started with me a couple years ago in a Diamond DA-40. He wasn't able to initially get his license when we first started, so we kept working and working and working. Finally, we switched over to the 172 because the number of DA-40s in our fleet had kind of shrunk down. And finally, this gentleman turned 16, and he was able to solo a couple months ago. So we've continued to fly with him in the Cessna 172. But he's the last person that I'm flying with that's not in a Cirrus at this point.
Oh, that's good. Tony S is asked.
He's taller than I am now. This guy is well over 6 feet. So it's pretty funny watching what's happened over the last couple of years flying.
4.5 feet he was when you started
Actually, on that note, when you when your students pass and they get their license and stuff, do you find a lot of the students then progress on to train to become a CFI like yourself?
I certainly encourage it as much as I can. I would say that relatively small percentage of them actually move on to become CFIs, or if they do, it's quite a bit longer. One of the things I do anytime I'm giving a presentation, I always ask all the CFIs up in the room to stand up, and we give them a round of applause and recognize them. And I talk about how I became a CFI, which was a little bit happenstance. And then I encourage them to become a CFI, and I tell them, I hope a couple of years from now, one of you will walk up to me and say, I hadn't thought about doing this, but you planted the seed in my mind, and yes, I became a CFI. So it's great fun. There is a CFI shortage right now because the airlines are hiring like crazy, and CFIs, I think, are excellent candidates to be airline pilots. So yeah, it's tough to sometimes find a CFI just because supply and demand is out of balance right now.
So one last question from Tony S. Then this is quite an interesting one. He says, "Do CAPS survivors get a tie like the Martin Bay ejectees?"
Well, it's interesting. There has been a lot of speculation about when we'll have either the first airplane to have caps pulled twice on it, or the first pilot, to end up pulling twice. So far, that hasn't happened. But there's actually a meeting of CAP survivors, which is going to occur this fall at the annual convention, because I think some of them do have unique experiences that other people just don't understand, and so this is an opportunity for them to talk among themselves about what was it like, and what kinds of things are they dealing with afterwards. I think some people kind of walk away from the experience and was like, yeah, all right, so I pulled the parachute, big deal, and they move on with their lives. Other people I think are they're a little bit more unsettled by the experience, and it's a little harder for them to move on. So it's a good opportunity, I think, for people to get together and just kind of talk about what their experiences were.
So what's the future hold then, Max? What's the plan for the next, or moving on? I mean, obviously you're ever so busy with podcast hosting, and obviously you've got the Geeks podcast, your own podcast.
I don't know how he has time to actually do any flying, frankly.
Oh, well, exactly.
That's a really good point. I don't either. There are days where I'll be out at the airport 8 hours flying, and I typically fly 5 or 6 days a week. I always make sure that I take off at least a day and a half over the weekend, because I don't want to get in the position where, gosh, I'm not liking flying anymore. I've thought a lot about the question you just asked, what next? A couple of things. I am working on a couple of books, so that's part of why I'm staying here this week. And no, I'm not going to tell you what they are. They're just
let me know so I can get one on Amazon, please.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have a heck of a lot of fun writing. It's kind of it's a fun counterpoise to the actual flying. So I get a little bit of both. When I'm flying, I'm outdoors and I'm having a good time, and yet when I'm on the book, I can just kind of nerd out and kind of dig into the minute details of particular things. So I like kind of having a little bit of that balance. I've thought about whether to spend more time in jets. The trouble with flying in jets is, as they say, the bigger the airplane you need, or the bigger the airplane you fly, the bigger the suitcase you need. And I'm lucky; I'm home almost every night. That's the nice thing about training. If I were off doing tons of jet work, well, then I'd be home, many more nights a year. So I'm kind of struggling with that balance. I do want to spend more time in the jets. Maybe some of the the other jets like the Vision Jet that have that particular glass cockpit, the G3000, and so we'll see. Just right now, I'm pretty happy with the balance. It's great, doing the podcast, all the interaction with listeners. I know you folks know what that's like. And the thing that I didn't expect when I started Aviation News Talk was two things. One, how much I would learn. Just because whenever I do a topic, I'm doing a lot of research on that topic. And so I've learned a lot from doing the podcast, but also what I've learned from listeners. There have been so many folks who after an episode will say, oh yeah, but you consider this, and by the way, you might want to look into that, and so on. So it's been a really great relationship with the community, and I've learned a lot, and hopefully they're profiting from it as well. So
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, to be honest with you. I mean, our show is only as good as it is because of the amazing people in the chat room. I mean, their knowledge will always far outstrip ours, if you like, when it comes
That's why we have a chat room.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the main reasons why we go to the hassle of doing it live, because it means people people can put us right immediately rather than waiting for the emails.
Actually, a nice little saying from Neil Lamborn in the chat room says that Max has a really calming voice. He must really help with instructing.
Too right, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep that same voice when I'm instructing, except when something starts to get a little critical.
Yes.
And then the voice sounds a little more intense, like, we need that power now.
Come on. Yes.
I think people, the tempo kind of increases, I think people hear that. It's like, oh, Max is really serious about this. I guess I better really, put the nose down further or add a little power now.
Yeah, don't muck about. This is serious.
So one last question. Then we've got another little segment to play out from Armando. But one last question before we finish, Max. It's a bit of.
I've got one last question for you as well too.
Go on.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Can I ask it now?
Yeah, go on. Go.
Boeing or Airbus?
Boeing. Hold on. Can I get my bottle, my water bottle?
Oh, there we go. Look at that. Sad.
Okay.
Honestly,
thank you.
Excellent. I like it.
No, we always ask that question, don't we, at the end of the. But I've got a bit of a twist to that question.
Presumably we've asked him this question.
Max.
Yeah.
So Max, you've got your house there where you live. You've got your garage. If you had a taxiway leading from your garage to a runway, and you had the choice to have any aircraft in that garage that you could just hop into now and go out for a flight, what would that aircraft be sitting in your garage now?
Wow, so it'd have to be pretty small to fit in the garage.
Yeah. It's a GA aircraft.
Yeah.
If I had an unlimited size garage, I guess you're asking what would be that fun thing to fly around. It's a tough question. Not
the Vision Jet.
And here's why it's tough. I don't do as much personal flying much anymore because I'm getting all the flying I could ever want. While teaching, I don't have family that are at distances where it's practical to go fly and see them. And when I want to go someplace to hang out, I drive 45 minutes down here and head down to the ocean and chill out with the cool ocean breezes there. So I guess it would have to be something like a Grumman Widgeon, a nice twin-engine seaplane. That would probably be the fun thing to have in the garage there. And I did get my multi-engine seaplane ATP rating in a Widgeon. So
there's nothing this guy can't do, Matt.
No,
have you got that now?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
If you're in a plane and that the pilots are just jumping out and you need a pilot.
Right, he's
Max is the man you needed. With
a small part of me is thinking if they're jumping out, I don't want to be anywhere near the damn thing either, because
But mate,
pilots don't tend to evacuate their evacuate the ship.
Well, Dr. Steph does. She's forever jumping out of aircraft.
She's one of those silly people that straps a parachute to her back and throws herself out. Come on.
But let me tell you the odd thing about getting your ATP in a seaplane. Not only do you have to do all the landings on the water, you have to do instrument approaches and then circle and land on the water. So it's kind of an interesting combination.
I bet. But it sounds fun, though. I'd love to fly a seaplane. Anyway, I'm going to have to raid the joint account again. So, there we go.
Wow. Okay.
Right, so we've got just one last little segment to play out for you from Armando before we wrap up the show. And this one is Sandra Payne and Barry Payne, and they are going to be talking about their Comanche 250.
All right. So, team, I'm here with Miss Sandra Payne and Barry Payne, who are flying a Comanche all the way across the world. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you.
So you're flying across the world. How did you get this idea?
Well, it was, we've run out of long-range flying to do in the South Pacific area, and we thought, what's next? And Sandra said, well, we should fly around the world. And I said, well, why not? Let's go do it.
Now, she was telling me you guys have flown this Comanche over some pretty open expanses of water, haven't you? Just in the past 10 years.
We have, and we live in New Zealand, and anywhere you want to go seriously outside New Zealand, you've got a lot of water to fly over to get to the next bit of land or country. So, we're quite used to flying over water, and in fact, I bought the Comanche so that we could do just that with ease. And,
So what was it about the I've flown the Comanche, and I know I fell in love with it as soon as I started flying it, but what was it about the Comanche that you were looking for that you said that's the right airplane to do this?
Well, it wasn't my choice to begin with. I was looking for an aeroplane that we could do just what we're doing now with, comfortably. And a good friend of mine said, well, you need a Comanche. And I said, no, I don't, thinking they were too old. But when I looked at the performance specs, he was right. And this Comanche, it's a light aeroplane. We can carry the fuel load and ourselves and some very light baggage and survival equipment and take off at gross weight.
Now, Miss Sandra, you're also a pilot, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So how do you manage the workload or the planning going across the ocean and such an endeavor?
Barry and I fly as a crew, and we decided we'd look at what our strengths and weaknesses were, and so he does all the takeoffs and landing and twiddling with the the autopilot. I manage the systems and the fuel and the human factors, making sure our oxygen levels are at the right level, hydration, all the things that I call housework on the flight. And together, I think we fly as a pretty nice team.
Well, that's the perfect marriage too, isn't it?
A very good one, actually. Yeah, so we've been married 50 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
I've been flying 50 years. And we've got 50 flights around the world.
So 50 years at Oshkosh as well.
Yeah,
it's the stars have aligned this year to do this, right?
Yeah, certainly have.
Now, what kind of planning, we were talking a little bit about weather planning, just in what time of year do you go, but what kind of planning considerations does it take to go across the world?
Well, obviously, fuel is the big criteria. Avgas is not as available as it used to be many years ago. So our routing is primarily around where the fuel's available. And then, of course, where it's... In many cases, we just want to go to those places and have a look. So that really set our planning.
Now, you were saying that you've crossed the equator a couple of times now.
We will do. We've crossed it once, and when we go back, we'll cross it again.
And no major weather problems or challenges?
When we came up through the intertropical conversion zone, we were expecting a little bit of turbulence and maybe not such a good flight, but we were blessed and we had a really nice smooth ride. The interesting thing is you could see the pattern ahead of you, and the clouds were quite open, so we were allowed to, just go around them and keep going. So it was a pretty nice flight.
Now, what's the longest leg that you're doing that is over water, or the furthest from an airport that you will be?
We've already done that. It was from from Guam to Kagoshima in Japan, and that was a 9-hour flight over water. And it really was over water. There wasn't a bird, a fish, a plane, or an island anywhere along the line. But it was a good flight, and we really enjoyed it.
Have you made any special modifications to the airplane for this trip?
No, really, it's the airplane as we use it every time we fly. It has, as a Comanche, it has an extra fuel tank in the back, but that's an STC fuel tank for the Comanche. So we've got 140 gallons, which gives us about 11 and a half hours. And so literally, and I maintain it, so I'm the engineer as well.
Great.
So we literally pushed it out of the hangar, put our survival gear on board, and set out.
That's great. And can you describe the route a little bit? So you've left New Zealand, and what's the overall plan?
We left New Zealand on 28th of April, and we've allowed ourselves a 6-month window to do the trip. We went from New Zealand to Australia, Australia to Papua New Guinea, Papua New Guinea to Guam, Guam to Japan, 3 stops in Russia, and then across to Nome in Alaska. And we've done a bit of a tiki tour, I think you would call it, in the USA. And we went out to New York, and then we went down to Tulsa in Oklahoma, and then back on up here to Oshkosh. So this is kind of about halfway. From here we go into Canada, over to Goose Bay, up to Greenland, Iceland, and into Scotland, England. And then we're hoping to go to Switzerland, Poland, and then to Moscow. And from Moscow we'll go across Russia and into Vladivostok, and then down south home from there.
That's a amazing endeavor that you're taking on. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier was the community aspect of aviation, and how when someone takes on an effort like this, suddenly people start helping you from all over, don't they?
Look, aviation, the general aviation community is worldwide, is smitten with exactly the same virus, and so there's no known antidote, and you just enjoy it. And so it doesn't matter where you are. The only difference might be a bit of language, but that's quickly overcome by the fraternity of aviation. We have met so many lovely people across all of the countries we've visited so far, and all I can say is if that was the world, it's a nice place.
I agree, and Oshkosh is the best place to experience that, with people from all walks of life and every country and every kind of airplane here, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, no, amazing. So it's our second visit to Oshkosh, and I can say bringing our airplane here has been one amazing experience, and we're only halfway through.
Well, I wish you all the best, and we actually always end with one question, and since you're both pilots, I'll ask both of you. If you could fly any airplane in the world, current, past, future, and money was no object, other than your beautiful Comanche, because I did take a look at it, it's beautiful, what airplane would that be?
I think here at Oshkosh I've actually fallen in love with the Spartan Executive. And I think I wouldn't mind giving that one a go. Yeah.
And me, I couldn't go past a Mustang. Have to have it to match my motor car.
Well, I think you guys should pass out your cards and your little brochure over there in the Vintage and Warbirds area, and you may get the chance before you take off on Thursday, right?
Yeah. And thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to perhaps meeting up again in the future. But if you ever come down under, do come and see us.
I absolutely will. I have your contact information, and you're leaving here Thursday. So if anybody is listening over in Europe and anywhere on that route that they mentioned, look them up on their website, which I saw, and you can actually, what's the website again?
BazFlyer.com.
And that's Baz, Bravo Alpha Zulu, flyer.com. And you can follow their progress. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
That was amazing. 50 years of flying.
I know.
That he'd done.
Crazy,
That was crazy. All those years of flying. I tell you, that's why it's the safest way to travel.
It is.
It is. But what an amazing couple.
Yeah. And doing a very cool thing together,
I know.
which is even nicer.
I know. I'm just looking actually on their website at the moment while we're on the thing, on the Baz Flyer, and just looking on there. They've got a website. It's Around the World 2019.com, and the homepage has got a lovely photo of Zulu Kilo Bravo Alpha Zulu flying over the sea, which Matt has just put up on the screen. That's very good of you, Matt. He's on the ball, this boy, I tell you. But you can actually, there's a link on their website. You can click on Tracker, and you can actually track the progress when they're actually flying, which is absolutely fantastic as well. So, no, thanks very much for that, Armando. Very much appreciated as well. We enjoyed that, as well did the chat room. So don't forget as well, we've got loads more coming up from Armando from Osh in future episodes. One of those being an interview that Armando done this week with Tammy Jo Schultz.
You're very excited about that, aren't you?
Yeah, who you'll remember was the pilot on the Southwest Airlines flight that had the uncontained engine failure. I think was it last year that happened? I remember, I think it was.
Actually, Neil said in the chat, I wonder where they're coming in the UK. It'd be great to see them.
They won't be coming to Norwich.
No? Oh, what a shame.
What a shame.
He's on the coast.
I know. That'd be nice, though.
It would, yes, absolutely.
But yeah, we've got loads of content coming up. There's an interview that I done at the Bristol Aviation Museum a few weeks ago. That's coming up as well in the future episodes. So we've got tons of content to bring you over the coming months. And not forgetting as well, we will be at the Biggin Hill Festival of Flight as well on Saturday, the 17th of August. So if any of our listeners in the UK or across the globe who are in the UK want to come and join us there, we'll be there in our full PTUK shirts, and I think if the weather's like this, we won't be wearing ties. Or
no, I don't think so. I think we'll just open neck shirts.
We're open neck shirts.
Yeah, I tell you what, a lot of love in the chat room here again. Masha is the lovely Masha is saying what an amazing couple. Chris Grigg says they're not coming to Norwich due to their landing fees. And yes, obviously, as you probably noticed, Max has had to go. He had to sort of disappear, unfortunately. We've taken up far too much of his time.
Max he's had to go off and fly a Cirrus.
Yeah, literally, because he's got a lesson booked.
It's terrible. But we're going to say a quick thanks as well to Max Trescott for joining us on the show this week. Don't forget, you can find him over at the Aviation News Talk podcast, which he does himself, and also on the Airplane Geeks podcast. So find him on there as a regular host.
If you want to get in touch with the show, it is via the website, www.planetalkinguk.com. You'll find us on social media by searching for Plane Talking. Pardon?
Social Meads.
Social Meads.
That's what Dr. Steph would say.
Is it? Okay. I'm sorry. We speak English here, though. Yes. So if you'd like to find us on social media, search on your chosen platform for Plane Talking.
Are you doing your acrobatics again?
And our email address is podcast@planetalkinguk.com. It's no wonder I'm going slightly bananas, is it? Yes.
And also, don't forget, we've got lots of shiny new, beautiful 100% cotton T-shirts in the PTUK store. So take yourselves over to the website and click on store and grab yourself a PTUK T-shirt for this amazing airshow season.
Indeed. Thank you very much also to our wonderful chat room, as always, especially Tony, actually, who's been on fire with
Tony
some
has been on fire.
Great questions this week, which is great. So thank you to everyone, and Neil and Chris and everyone who...
And look who was in the chat room as well this week.
Sir
Rick Bell.
Sir Rick of Bell, yes, absolutely. That is where we bring episode number 279 to a close. Is it 279, isn't it? Have you nodded off there, Carlos? Sorry.
So I'm just I'm reading the chat room.
Don't do that.
That is all we have time for this week on episode number 279. But don't forget, join us next week for 280 of the show, where hopefully Nev and Armando will be back in the hot seats with us. So, from me, Carlos, here in the YouTube. Well, in the PTUK studios.
World,
it's too hot in here. Thanks, everyone who's joined us in the YouTube world, and have a great weekend. And that's it then, Matt. Just me and you to say goodbye.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Shall I find the escape button?
Find the escape button.
Yeah, there it is.
Was it Control-Alt-Delete?
Yeah, Control-Alt-Delete. That's the one. Everybody, we'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.